Hi everyone, Uncle Nacki here. Going to show you some more T206s from the ungraded portion of my collection. This will be part 4. I thought I was going to be able to do it possibly in 8 parts, but I think we might have to actually do 10. I don't realize how many there are, in the box when they're, kind of compressed together. So it's, it's a little deceiving. I don't like to make, videos go any more than an hour. It's just, too much per video. So, I try to keep them, somewhat condensed, but at the same time, I don't want to, lack, information or conversation, during the video. So if you've been, following the series, you've, probably learned a lot of different things already about these cards and the different card backs and, different combinations that are, more difficult to come by. But some people haven't seen those other videos, so I may happen to repeat myself on certain things, but there's nothing wrong with repeating good information. The more you hear it, the more you kind of get used to it and learning something without even realizing you're learning it. And next time you're at a show, you might see one of these cards and say, hey, I know about that card back, and that's the most common one of the bunch, and and you don't really have to put a whole lot of thought into it. It just over time will become natural. So, but we'll go through at least this handful here, and then we'll see where we're at. Okay, so this here, decent card. The top edge, looks to be a little, I don't know if it's trimmed. It could have been maybe trimmed at some point. Just looking at it at this angle, it doesn't look perfectly straight to me. So whether I knew that at the time or it was factored into the price, I'm not really sure. We'll take a look at the back, and okay, now I know exactly what's going on. This here, this card back, Sweet Capital, 350, 460 subjects with the factory 30. There was a group of these cards that came out and a few years back, and they were all hand cut, and some of those cards that were hand cut were also not supposed to exist because they were missing the overprint. The factory 30 there on the bottom was supposed to be covered up with a scroll mark and then have a reprint and it say that it's actually a factory 42. But there were also other cards in that group that were hand cut along with the other ones, which are known today as the no print cards. So there were other batches of these cards that, although they were identical backs, and they were hand cut and they were from the same collection, cards such as this one just wasn't really worth a whole lot. If anything, it was considered more to be just a basic authentic trimmed card or damaged card. And the only reason for that is because this card, the card front with this card back combination with the factory 30 does exist. So that doesn't make this version of it really worth any more money, because it already exists. So this is more of a I see them sometimes offered on eBay, and we'll mention that the card that's being sold is part of a grouping of cards that were discovered, and they were all hand cut, and they consisted of the no print cards. And it's true. That's what this card is, and I actually have a few more of these. But the thing is that they exist with this back already, so it doesn't make them really any more rare. Like I said, it's just, to me, it's considered a damaged card. So when I was buying the cards that weren't supposed to exist, I was buying even the ones that were, just because it was, I was getting them at such a low price, and I wasn't trying to leave certain ones out and make my buying patterns suspicious. And I got away with it for a few weeks, 3 or 4 weeks, before other people started to catch on and say, hey, something funny is going on. And then at that point, people started realizing that half of the cards being offered were not supposed to exist with those front back combinations. And then there was a lot more interest in them, and it just made things more expensive for me, because I was trying to accumulate a majority, and I do have the majority. I have the only complete set of those cards, which consists of 28 different cards, and then there's another grouping of the cards, this is part of that does exist, but they just happen to be from that same collection, and they were obtained the same way. Excuse me. So there was, when however the story went, when uncut sheets left the factory, there were probably 3 or 4 different sheets that were taken. In my theory, 2 of the sheets, were just supposed to be, cut at the factory and packed in cigarettes, and the other 2 sheets still had a print process to go, one more print process before they were cut up, and that was to get those overprints put on the back of the cards. And because they left the factory before that final printing, those cards are extremely rare, because they're just not supposed to exist, and they do. So I was actually searching those cards out way before that find ever happened, just because I knew there was a chance that something could be found. All it took was one of those sheets just to miss that last step, and I never figured it would wind up to the public based on like a sheet that was cut up at a later time. I just figured maybe there was one sheet that just didn't get their overprints, but they were still cut and mixed in with the rest, and entered into the tobacco packs. So that's why if you look at even the card sides, they're not perfectly straight. And in the front, if you look real close on some of these, you can actually see pencil marks on them. On this one, I don't really see it, but you can tell that the borders are just they're not straight. So this came from the factory 30 no print group that was found, but this is not one of the one of the rare expensive ones, because this card front back combination does exist. So it doesn't make this any more special than any of the other cards, other than that, it was hand cut. So, if you put a value, to one of these cards that was hand cut from a sheet, that's maybe the only value that it does have. Like I said, I'm pretty sure I got a few of these, and I don't know if they're all in the same grouping here. This one looks like another one. So you can see the top is not perfectly straight, and it's the same thing. 354.60 subject, factory 30. But with this card, that front combination with this back, just the way it is, does exist. It's supposed to exist. So when you put the two side by side, they're identical, except for the fact that one was factory cut and one was hand cut, and that's the only difference between these. So it's really difficult to put a value on these. Some people seek them out just because they're part of history now, even though they're not what I would call extremely collectible. But if you want to just be able to say that you have a card from that particular grouping or that find, this is the way to go, to keep pricing down. There wasn't many of them, so if I had to guess, for the ones that are supposed to exist, like these, there was maybe, I don't know, 40 or 50 of them. So it's a small number. So at some point they may be, they might have more value, but there's really no way to guarantee that these cards were from that particular grouping of cards. It's basically just my word. Because I had purchased these, direct, and, I can tell you, the exact, days that I bought these on, and that's really about it. So they may have a little bit of value, but, not much. If I send these into, PSA to get graded, these are all going to come back as, authentic but altered, unfortunately. And even the other ones that aren't supposed to exist are going to come back the same way. They're going to come back as authentic, but they're not going to say factory 30 no print on them. And I've been trying to get them to change that up and do it correctly on their end, since they do now recognize them. PSA recognizes them in their population report. They actually have a separate section, just for these cards. But you won't find these players on that list because, these players are supposed to exist with this back. So here's another one. And I think I got maybe, I don't know, 10 of them maybe, 10 or 15 of this style that are supposed to exist. The ones that are not supposed to, not that I've lost count, but I just haven't looked it up in a while. But I think I have close to 60 of them. Like I said, there's 28 different cards in the set, and there's only one known complete set, which is the one I have, because there's one of those cards in the 28 card set was the only one that ever showed up. The other cards in the set of 28, some of them were had doubles, some were there were 3 cards for each. Other ones had 6 and 7 duplicates of the same card. So there are some in the no print group that are a little bit easier to come by, even though you may not see them show up, because there's just 2 or 3 of us in the hobby that hold the majority of them. And we got Fred Merkle, Sovereign 460. So Sovereign 460 is from the 1911 portion of the set. The T206s were issued in 1909, 1910, 1911, and the easiest way to kind of classify when a card was made was the 1909s were the 150 subjects, the 1910s were the 350 subjects, and then the 1911s were the 460 subjects. And when you have something like a 350 460 subject, this is considered a 460 subject card, even though it says 350 460. So this would be considered a card from 1911. And so would this. This is also 1911. The Sovereign 460 subset, there's 52 cards in the subset. 6 of those cards are extremely difficult. So just because there's not a lot of cards doesn't make it, a simple set to put together. Here's a polar bear back. Polar bear backs, it's a great subset to collect. There's 250 cards in the subset, and there's some difficult ones, but not any that are that I would call impossible. So if you want a nice somewhat long-term collection to work on, I recommend the polar bears. And if the time comes where you complete the set and you're looking for your next step, you're almost halfway to a complete 524 card T206 set. So you could just continue on with other backs, or a combination of backs, or however you want to do it. There's so many different ways to collect the set. You have a whole bunch of options. There's another polar bear back. You're going to see a lot of polar bear backs in my collection because I have 245 out of the 250. The ones I'm lacking are just the higher priced cards, but they're not rare at all. They're I could go on eBay right now and I believe find all 5 of them. It's just you get to a certain point where you shop around, until the right one comes along at the right price. If there's always some available, there's no point in just buying them because you want to buy them because they're a good fair price. Let's see if I can see what this one is. I think this is a factory 30. So this card back is fairly common. Sweet Capital 350 subject with a factory 30. I picked this card up mainly because some of these Cincinnati cards have the red actually missing, and you can see it's pinkish, but not completely there. But I think if I had to guess, I'd say I paid $20 for this card because I'm not a big fan of the the missing red ink cards, because it's so easy for those colors to kind of wash away with certain chemicals and glues that were used on the back side. So if you ever see a card being offered that is missing red ink, definitely look at the back of the card and look for signs of it being glued into a scrapbook, or any sort of card back damage like missing paper. and that would be why the red ink is, you know, missing. This is Sovereign 150, so this would be from the 1909 series. Sovereign 150s lately are becoming, you know, more popular. I think everyone is realizing, you know, just how much more difficult the Sovereign 150s are compared to some of the other backs, and that, you know, if you look at the population report numbers, they kind of fall in line with, you know, a much more expensive card back, and you know, all these years it was just considered, you know, one of the more, I don't want to say common, but it was in the common side of the group. And, you know, now when you look at, you know, the population reports after all this time, and a lot of these cards are still in the single digits for population, collectors are starting to, you know, take notice of that. And, you know, although they're trying to do it quietly, you can definitely see it in the pricing over the last year or so. You know, the prices are just, you know, definitely been higher, and, you know, they don't really hang around and last in like auctions and buy it nows. You know, people are always picking them up. There's another Sovereign 150, and, you know, same thing for me when I would buy a card. You know, I buy it based on difficulty. You know, I don't buy any of the cards that are simple to get, so you're not going to see a lot of the, you know, the common Piedmont cards, and you know, for the Sweet Capital cards, you're only going to see the 350 subjects with the factory 25s, and occasionally you'll see some of the other ones, but very few. And it's usually because, you know, I picked it up at a really good price, and it was you know, maybe in a PSA 4 or something like that. So you know, in a case like that, I won't pass it up, because, you know, I have to eventually get the card for my collection. So I'm not saying I'm never going to get them. I will get them, but they're plentiful, so it's not a huge rush. This one here, American Beauty, 350 subjects, and this has got the frame around it. 350 subjects came with a frame and without, and it's hard to say, you know. Like these here, they didn't have a 150 series. The 350 with the frame, I believe, came first out of the three. Then you had the 350 without the frame, and then you had a 460 that never had a frame, and just without frame. And another Sovereign 150. So you can see a pattern of my collecting. You know, I would try to pick up the more difficult of the cards. And another Sovereign 150. Now these cards here that are ungraded, you know, they're not in any particular order. It's just as I get them, and I get a, you know, small batch of them. Usually I'll reholder them, you know, in a clean holder, and then, you know, they go in the box, and they sit, and, you know, at some point they'll be you know, sent to PSA for grading. So these are, you know, just as I get them, you know, that's kind of like the order that they're in, you know, unless I obviously have to go through them and I have to pull a certain card out to either show a scan to somebody, or if somebody questioned its existence or anything like that. That would be the only other time I would, you know, pull these out of any sort of sequence. You know, I do have them, you know, on a checklist, so I know what I have, you know, but it's not important enough for me to try to put these in any sort of alphabetical order or an order by back at this point. You know, I may do that if and when I finally go to submit the cards to PSA, just to make the you know, filling out the forms easier. And this is a polar bear back. Jack Berry. Another polar bear back. So polar bear backs. Polar bear was these were inserted into scrap tobacco. So they, you know, they weren't cigarettes. They were. It was just loose tobacco, and you know, the tobacco would actually seep into the cardboard, so you would get, you know, these little, you know, brown tobacco stains on these cards, and you know, it's just part of what these cards are all about. You know, you can see some of the tobacco staining up here, and it's normal when it comes to a polar bear back. So if you were to send this to PSA, they're not gonna, you know, give you a qualifier like as a MK for a mark qualifier. It's just gonna get graded based on its overall, you know, centering, condition, creases. You know, the less, you know, staining you have, obviously the higher the grade, but you won't get a qualifier because of the staining. You know, unless it's, you know, maybe half of the pack is still stuck to the card, then they may give you a qualifier. But I haven't seen anything like that happen. This is the Sovereign 460. So this is, you know, considered like a 1911 card. And this is a card that's pretty beat up, so I must have really needed it. And this is the Tolstoy card back. Very difficult subset if you're thinking about, you know, going after this one. It's a very fun subset to collect. You know, a lot of challenges. The biggest challenge is there's just not a lot of certain cards. You know, certain cards only have, you know, there's so many of these cards that have populations below 5. So, you know, and all it takes is, you know, 5 or 6 people, you know, collecting this card back, and it becomes a, you know, a huge competition. So, so, you know, definitely worth, you know, thinking about collecting them, but it's something to also think about, you know, depending on how much of a challenge you want. I say, you know, go for the challenge. You know, that's what makes the, you know, collecting these cards fun. This card here is New York American variety. This card also comes in a St. Louis version, and the St. Louis version is only available with the polar bear back. So if you collect the polar bear backs, you have that one special card that's strictly just for your subset and your subset only. It wasn't made in with any of the other cards. Polar bear actually has two cards that fall into that category, and they're a little, probably the most difficult to come by, just because there's not a lot of them out there compared to some of the other cards. Even though the population reports will show that there's a bunch of them compared to some of the other polar bear backs, but that's only because, you know, a majority of them that are out there have been graded. You won't find too many that are, you know, still raw. And this is Tolstoy. So, you know, good front back combination. And we got Lou Ritter, polar bear back. And you can see some of the polar bear or the tobacco staining. Wouldn't want to see polar bear staining. That would be interesting. But that's yeah, tobacco stains on that. Alright, so we've got Oscar Stanage, polar bear. Like I said, if you're thinking about getting into T206s, polar bear backs are the way to go. You know, I collect all different kinds. You know, I was doing that from day one. It didn't take me long to, you know, decide that. You know, I probably decided doing that. You know, within the first 2 weeks of collecting these cards. I think I was only 2 weeks in, and I got my first you know, duplicate front with different card backs. And you know, when you have them in your hand side by side, you know, you start to realize, you know, the possibilities. And another polar bear back. You know, this back is a little off center. Centering, you know, it's funny with these cards. Sometimes if it's off center, you know, it's going to hurt you on value. But if it's overly off center, it's going to increase the value. So it's one of the weird things about these cards. You know, something that would normally take even more value away from a card. With this particular set, it actually, you know, people collect them, you know, with the miscut backs. And I have a few you know, within my collection that we'll eventually get to at some point. Okay, so this one here is the overprint that I was mentioning earlier. So underneath that overprint it says factory 30, even though you probably can't see it. And then if you look on the bottom, and this is kind of a bad example because everything is kind of shifted funny, but on the bottom there it actually says factory 42. There's a 42 right there at the tip of my finger. And that was just so they could take the factory 30 cards that were already printed, do this quick overprint, and then they were able to insert these cards into cigarettes that were being sold with the North Carolina tax. You know, that was really the only reason for it was strictly for tax reasons. You know, they had to have the tax number on the cards, and they must have made too many of the one card, and instead of running a brand new batch of cards, they just ran the sheets through just for the quick overprints. And this card here, I picked this up because this is another one of those cards where it's questionable if it's missing the red ink. He's supposed to have red around his hat and his collar. And it's a 350 subject factory 30, which is basically the most common of this particular you know, card back. It's considered you know, this front back combination, this would be a common card which would sell ungraded, you know, in this sort of a condition for about 20 bucks. Alright, I think we'll stop for now. I don't want to make the video too long, and you know, we're gonna have, you know, plenty to go through and talk about, this video. I spent a lot of time at the beginning talking about, these hand-cut cards, a little bit of background history on them. So we didn't get through as many cards, but, I want to make sure that, each of these videos that I do for you, you actually get something out of them. You learn something. And I'm not just, showing you some quick cards, with no collecting background or how they became, what they were, or some of the details of the backs, or what's more, rare than others, and, different combinations on, what's a good buy from back then and still is now, and, what's picking up now. So sometimes I spend a lot of time talking about different things, but if you watch the videos and you watch them a second time even, and until you kind of pick up exactly what I'm saying in each of these videos, you'll start to see a pattern, and that's going to help you collect in your kind of way that you want to collect. You can take the information that I give you, and you can just kind of, fit it to the way you want your set to assemble, and try to do it with, the minimal amount of mistakes, because the last thing you want to do is spend money on something that either isn't real or you thought was something that was rare that turns out it wasn't. So I want to talk about the different things, like the missing red ink and the overprint cards, and just because it's something that's hand cut doesn't make it worth a ton of money. So yeah, we'll call this the end of the video for now. Obviously I've got a whole bunch more to make, and we'll talk more about these cards. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe to the channel. It helps, encourage me to make, more videos and continue to make videos on other collectible topics. At some point I'd like to be able to, post a video at least once a day. But until my viewing numbers and subscription numbers and everything go up on the rise, I can only set a certain part of time aside, and not really turn this into kind of like a full-time job. So definitely, if you can, subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions, definitely leave them in the comments section. I always get back to everybody's questions at some point. And appreciate you spending some time with me today. We'll try to do another video tomorrow. Maybe we'll get through some more, quantity of cards. But I want, like I said, I just don't want to. I don't want to miss anything that is, important information, or information I wish I maybe had when I was starting out. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys soon.